Brian, I love to annoy him because he's my boss, but he hates to be called a boss because I see him. We have a standing appointment once a month that we generally don't keep. So we very rarely see each other. We're kind of out doing our own thing. I'll do my introduction, but I'm not normally used to being taped, so I think I need to give a disclaimer like in Dragnet. The examples I give you today are real. The names will be changed to protect the innocent. I won't disclose where they came from if it's like a negative situation, but they are real. And that's part of the interesting part of my job is seeing some of the bizarre things that happen to people. As Marge said, I'm a risk manager, and I see my role, and it'll be interesting, I think, today for me as well as you, because no one knows what I'm going to be saying. And in some ways, neither do I, because I just sort of stuck this together, took bits and pieces from other presentations and put them together for this particular topic. But I see my job as a risk manager coming into an organization, analyzing what their hazards are, using past experience, because my 99% of my job is dealing with human service providers. So I'm not dealing with steel scaffolding and high steel erection and concrete contractors, auto dealers. They all have their own individual hazards they need to deal with. I'm seeing typically the kind of claims that happen to you. I see my job as going in and explaining what those hazards are to management and the safety committees. And then I kind of step back, and it's up to you guys to take that information and implement it. I can tell you to have a footwear policy, or suggest you have a footwear policy. It's up to you to determine whether or not you're going to have a footwear policy and whether you're actually going to implement the footwear policy. I can also show, here's what it's costing you for injuries due to footwear. Or one that's very controversial is I'll go into youth programs, and I will always recommend they have a sports activity policy. Doesn't mean they're going to take the one that I think is best, but I'm hoping that they're going to implement something, because if they don't, then over a period of years, and they pay for, I can get absolutely actual events, broken elbows from playing volleyball, or staff playing volleyball. Now the kids don't get hurt, it's always the staff. Torn ACLs, because you have a 24-year-old that thinks they're 16. So I'm getting off track here a little bit, but what I'm looking forward to here is I call this road warrior hazards, and a lot of times I can't say I do what you do. I work with people who do what you do, but I'm right in the same boat with you here, because I'm on the road all the time. When I'm home, it's still day trips. You know, to me, this is a piece of cake. Philadelphia is a piece of cake. But I might be in Erie, Pittsburgh. I cover the entire state, and I'm the only risk manager for the trust. So I have to be all over the place constantly. So what you're dealing with, I think I'm dealing with. What hazards do you see? It's my understanding you guys are all supervisors, and that the majority of your employees are going out in the world to see people, not coming into an office to do so. Is that correct?
We have a mix, Scott.
Okay.
So some of the folks here have, well, raise your hands, who has folks on the road? And who has
Okay.
folks that are always in the office?
Okay, and even then, they have to get out of their car, get into the office, or they may have to go out for a meeting like this, right? What would you say before we hand out the handouts, because then you'll have all the answers. What would you say the hazards are that you face when you go out and do your job on the road as opposed to being inside an office? Anybody? Okay, we're going to get, what's that?
Other drivers?
Driving is one. That's a big one.
Weather conditions.
As far as driving, or, yeah, I mean, where are the injuries? What type of injuries are you having, I guess would be maybe a better way to phrase it. I'll tell you what I'll do. Go ahead, Marge, send them out, because I think it'll become evident as we go along. Over the agenda, I just want to kind of give you an overview of why we're here today, which I already started. And then the three areas I really thought we should cover, and they'll kind of blend in one to the other, is the perils. That's what I was just kind of asking you. They that you're going to run into on home visits. Analyzing the injury cost, which is really what Marge was just talking about when she was saying the supervisors have to be the first line of defense as far as doing an investigation. That's really, I want to give you a little bit of an idea of how that works. And then what can we do about this? And that's also going to be interwoven throughout the whole thing, improving that work environment outside, not here. It's easy for us to say we're not going to run an extension cord across the floor and enforce it here. But when you go to a private home, you have a whole different situation. You guys are in the business of helping people, so this is just an extension of your role. The dollars equaling pain and suffering, for some of the other presentations, I actually show their claims for the whole trust that I work with that Marge is talking about. I show where their injuries are coming from, and for them across the state, almost year after year after year. It's violence, body mechanics, and slips and falls. Slips and falls being number one consistently for dollars of injury, okay? Now, we have to look at that from a business standpoint. That's real money that your employer is paying for workers' comp. However, I like to look at that, and I think we should look at this, and safety committees should look at it, as those dollars representing pain and suffering. That $10,000 that is being paid by the insurance company, and hopefully I'll come back to that. Well, right now, it's not. If you have 3 auto accidents on your personal auto policy, what happens?
Premium goes up.
Your rates go up. And they're going to get their money back. That's the way insurance works. They're not in business to lose money, just like any other business. Same thing applies to workers' comp. But that $10,000, that's real money, and you can use this with your coworkers. That back injury doesn't just affect my work life. It affects my entire life. It may mean that I can't pick up my grandchild for a month, or I can't go hunting or fishing or skiing, whatever my passions outside of work are. Any way you can use that when you start talking about workplace safety makes it, I think, more real for people. And you guys are supervisors, so you set the tone. If we have a footwear policy, that's one that we have an organization in Western Pennsylvania. They had a very strict footwear policy. They got a new HR director in, and she started coming to work with flip-flops on. She said, it's okay because I'm not out in the field. She's still setting the tone. And they start backsliding because the other people live, why do I have to do it? So you get the drift there. This is one of my pet peeves, and that's what the mousetrap is about. I found out not too long ago, having been in the workforce for a long time, that now we have to do everything ourselves, including learning how to do PowerPoint. So this was my first experiment about a couple years ago of trying to find stuff and sticking it in there to at least jazz it up a little bit. But to me, that's a major trap. If someone says, and I hear it all the time with youth programs, the kids are getting bigger, tougher, much more difficult to deal with. You don't just take that information and go, so I guess I'm going to get hit every now and then. The really good organizations I work with recognize those hazards, and then they find ways to improve their training, improve their systems, to make sure their employees aren't getting hurt. And another thing that you can do is to set realistic goals. I mean, we do that in every aspect of our lives. So this is from the SEALs, SMART goals. I don't know if you've heard of that before, the acronym, but your goals, just to help you attain them, should be specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. What are these injuries costing me? I think you threw out a number of what your workers' comp premium is. And typically for an employer, it's the third highest expense item on their balance sheet. Number 1 is payroll, number 2 is medical insurance, and typically number 3 is workers' compensation. It's a big part of your budget. What do I care? What do I care what my employer pays? Well, you talked about it earlier. It is, again, part of the budget. And there's something that Marge also referred to as the experience mod. Now, we throw that out all the time. I don't know if you know what that is. It's the equalizer. If you start in business today, don't have any past experience, your experience modification no matter what insurance company you're with, is 1. 1 times the rate is the rate. There's no advantage or disadvantage because you don't have any past history. But then, I'm going to oversimplify this, they take 3 years of running history based mostly on severity and frequency of claims, how many you've had and how bad they are. They get plugged into this mile-long formula and it spits out a number. If you are, you're being compared to every other facility like yours in Pennsylvania, you have a code number, they have a code number, so you're on equal ground. They are comparing you to every other facility in Pennsylvania doing what you do. If you are completely average, you're a 1. If you start doing worse than the average, it starts going up, let's say to a 1.2. If you're doing better than average, it goes down to a 0.8, so you're getting a 20% credit off the rate. 1.2 is a 20% penalty on top of the rate. That's the way you want to think about it. We have 1 member, 2 members in this trust that I work with that pay over $1 million a year for their workers' comp insurance. A 40% difference is a lot of money. That's money that's now being thrown into this hole of insurance that can come back and help prevent layoffs. It can help improve programs. It can help buy equipment. So we all have a stake in it, every employee. The 3 to 5 times direct cost, the $10,000 injury I talked about, that's a very conservative number too, 3 to 5 times. The insurance company is going to pay $10,000. What they are paying, that $10,000 is made up of medical and also indemnity, lost wages. That's all they're paying. What's it costing you as an organization? While I'm the injured employee and I'm out, you have to pay, maybe have somebody trained to cover my shift. You have to pay overtime for somebody to cover my shift. It's also a hassle for supervisors to do all that scheduling. As you really look deeper and deeper into it, you're going to find it's costing you a lot more than that $10,000, which again, the insurance company is going to get back anyway. I should have had this up front. You're allowed to talk. I'd appreciate it if you don't fall asleep, but that usually doesn't happen when an executive director is sitting here. So you can, this is when I ask a question, it doesn't mean it's rhetorical. You actually can throw out an answer, and if I miss something, let me know. I had 3 cups of coffee this morning. I usually only have 1, so I'm probably going to go fast. Try to hang on. Okay, the perils. First one I've got there is slips, trips, and falls. That I understand is one of your main causes of injury, and you're not alone. This one frustrates me more than anything else because a lot of my clients deal with violent clients. They deal with lifting because I deal with visiting nurses, hospitals, adult MHMR, alcohol and drug. I'm trying to think, sheltered workshops, I'm leaving some people out. There's a variety of jobs that are done in those areas, but slips, trips, and falls across the board in the United States is one of the top 3 causes of injury. We all walk every day. We all think we know how to walk every day, and then we get bad injuries. And it's not Chevy Chase taking a pratfall. When you're talking about a coffee spill, this always comes back. There will be a claim that sticks out in my mind that gives you trouble going to sleep at night. And there was a lady in an office setting. There was a coffee spill on the floor of their little kitchenette for the employees. She hit that, and most people would just slip and not go down. Some people would slip and go down, and it would be not a major injury. Her side of her head hit the corner of the table, and she has permanent brain damage from that brain injury. It is important, and we need to be very vigilant to try to help people understand what the consequences can be. Footwear, I have a question. Do you have a policy? You say you do have a policy. The big question then is it isn't enforced. Like my HR director that was new that came in, and she wasn't following the company's own footwear policy. So you're setting an example. If you're not following your footwear policy, your coworkers won't as well. And that's up to you and management to decide how that's going to be done. So are you setting the example? Also, this is, again, one of my pet peeves. I get this feedback from people all the time. And you can tell I made this up, and you can tell I don't understand the price of the ladies' shoes. Because when I went back, my assistant said, well, you get flip-flops flip-flops at Walmart for like $3.95 or something. I thought I was going low there. My wife apparently is spending more than I realized. What I'm getting at is some agencies will say you can't wear flip-flops because there's all kinds of varieties of footwear policies. And then somebody comes in and goes, these aren't flip-flops, these are Gucci's, and I paid, $150 for them. So they're not flip-flops. So it's within the footwear policy. Let's be more definitive in our policy. Closed-toed shoe, no heels, that type of thing. So you have to be very careful about that as well. Either way, whether that $100 shoe or the $15 shoe, you can end up with a $10,000 injury. And this is another one that's not showing up real good, but I know everybody wants to be professional, and you should be professional when you go out there, but sometimes the claims I see, we have some people on some really high heels that are falling out of their shoes. We're trying to chase clogs are another one. You have preschool operation, and a kid starts darting toward the street, and somebody makes a move to go after them, and they fall out of their clogs. I don't know if clogs are around as much as they used to be, but just try to remember that you want to look good. I don't know how much you want to impress that client, but you certainly probably want to impress your significant other or the one that you're trying to attract on the weekend. So it's a trade-off. If you're trying to look too glitzy during the week and you're having problems walking in on a icy sidewalk with heels on, you may end up in a cast over the weekend. The other thing that kind of I like to mention is that sometimes I get some pushback in group homes, and that doesn't seem necessarily what we were talking about here, where the employee goes in and they say, wait a minute, it's a home environment. It's supposed to be a home environment. So I don't wear shoes at home. So why do I have to wear them here on the job? That doesn't make sense. Well, it does make sense because the home environment is for the consumer. You're there being paid. And if there's a fire at 3 o'clock in the morning, you better be ready to react immediately and have proper shoes on. So again, I don't know if you've gotten that pushback, but it's something to consider. The other one doesn't come up often, but I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't in the future, and that's culture, where somebody has a footwear policy, but they go to a private home, and the family, they don't want shoes worn in their house. No one's allowed to wear shoes in their house. Well then, what do we do alternatively? You still can wear socks, and again, I have to go back to my wife as an example. I know she's from North Carolina. It's hard to get her in shoes unless she's being somewhere formal. But she does have socks for the winter that's got some sort of tread on the bottom. So, I mean, there's an alternative if you have to do that. But again, it's a discussion internally. The other thing here, you guys are out in all kinds of weather when you're going into home visits. So I'll give you a couple quick ones. Yak Tracks, one of the very large organizations here in Northeast Pennsylvania. You know what Yak Tracks are? No. They go over your shoe. The trust that I do most of my work with, 2 years ago, we bought 10 pair for every one of the member agencies to try to encourage them to try them. Now, some didn't like them, and some did. And this one large organization here in Northeastern Pennsylvania, they made it mandatory. Now, when you make it mandatory, that's a different management situation. It's like saying you must wear steel-toed shoes. If you do that, then it's incumbent upon the employer to buy them. If you say you can't wear this, you can't wear this, you can't do this, this is part of our safety policy, that's a whole different story. We're not supplying the equipment. In this case, they've taken that lead. They're saying you must wear them while you're going out when the weather is icy. And so they purchased them for them. And so wear boots. Again, it's, wear something appropriately. In your Northeastern Pennsylvania, I get just anecdotally, I don't have the actual numbers to prove it if I had to, but I go to Erie quite often. And I'm always amazed that one of our visiting nurse organizations is up there. They're out all the time going in and out of houses. They have like the fewest slips and falls on ice and snow of almost any other organization. And you think, Erie? Come on, they're always getting hit with ice and snow. Yeah, but they're used to it, and they don't mind wearing boots to work and then taking the boots off and changing into business shoe once they're in. So it's like everyone else is doing it, so I'll do it. That's the problem with the app tracks. It's not a fashion statement, and it's hard to get. Once you get a couple people doing it, then you might be able to get other people doing it. Party favors is a really old one. You get out of the car, and the family you're going to see didn't take the time, or they didn't do a very good job of cleaning the sidewalk for your way in, okay? This is something the safety committees can sponsor. You go out and buy a eco-friendly bag of no skid that you would throw out in front of your house. Don't use cat litter, that's not eco-friendly, and don't use something that's going to kill the client's grass. But do a little research, something that's, bio, whatever. And you take a couple handfuls and put them in little sacks, like a party favor. And when I come into the office for a meeting or something, and I'm a road person, you give me a small box of these things. Now I get to that location and I see it's icy. They can throw it out ahead of them. It's not going to melt the snow. But the action of realizing that it's slippery, having this, and saying, I'll try it, they throw it out, mentally they're thinking about the walking surface. So, that other people have tried that and have kind of liked it. Our nemesis, black ice, we didn't have it last year, which really scares me. Our group, we're over $1 million less in claims this year compared to last year, strictly due to slips and falls and ice and snow. We tracked that. We didn't have ice and snow this year. So, that's what I'm really trying to hammer home to them. We can have the same result if people are careful. And one of the ways to do that is attention to footing. It's so simple. How do you do this and make it exciting, though? That's your challenge. You have to keep it in front of people on a regular basis. I talked about that in the safety committee training, but I'm getting way behind here. But take your time. People are rushing. I know you've got a lot to do. You've got a lot to do quickly. The automobile accidents is another one. Part of the problem there is driving in unfamiliar areas. Garmin's can help that. A reoccurring theme I see is new employees. Human services, there's a large turnover of employees. Somebody's coming in new, they're excited to get a job, and they're going to a meeting for the first time. They don't want to be late, they miss the exit, and then they do dumb things to try to correct it. So make sure people understand your safety comes first. Cell phones and texting is against the law. So is robbing a bank, but some people do it. So you have to be aware that you don't want to do that. I was at a meeting not too long ago where after our claim review that Marge was describing, I went in and after I was leaving, he was bringing an employee in to dismiss her because she was in an accident and it came out that she was texting, which is completely against their rules. And he said, I can't have that. I can't put consumers in that situation. Defensive driving training and retraining. Again, when you're looking at how can we fix this, how can we improve, defensive driving training can be a big help. If you want to do that every now and then, you can buy tapes to reinforce. I used to do more than I do now, but it will scare you to death if you do defensive driving training. Now, I took my driving test at 16, as you can see from my hair. That was a long, long time ago. Most people my age have not picked up the manual that you had to learn to take your test. And since I was 16, there's been a lot of changes. And just recently, right, the merging has changed. When a police officer has someone pulled over on an interstate, now the law is you're supposed to move out into the left lane. You're not supposed to ride in the left lane. It's a passing lane in Pennsylvania. Every state's a little bit different. I've done defensive driving trainings, and you would be amazed at how many people insist that the yield sign on an entrance ramp is for the main flow of traffic, not for that entrance ramp. Not everybody knows what you know when you're out there. You're the captain of your ship. Always expect someone else to make an error and put yourself first. Never, ever let someone motion you out into traffic. A gazillion years ago, I started out as a school teacher, then I was an insurance adjuster. I hated that job for about a year and a half. But that used to be one we'd see all the time. Somebody's trying to be nice. Go ahead, go ahead. And now there's another lane beside them. They don't know there's a car coming. They wave you out to go across traffic, and boom, you get hit. That is now something that changed in Pennsylvania. If you can find out who that person is who waved you on, remember this the next time you want to be a nice guy. they can be held partially at fault for that accident. MVRs Marge talked about, fantastic. That's almost universally done. You have to get motor vehicle reports from employees. If you were just asking me for a copy of my driver's license and a copy of my insurance card, I'm not that clever, and I could get that real easy. And I could go put down a minimum deposit on auto insurance and never pay another penny, and I still have that card that says I'm good for 6 months. And my license may have been revoked, but I might still have a copy of my driver's license. So you don't know what you're going to find out on MVR reports. The second thing is, once you get the MVR reports, what do you do about it? You're representing the employer when you're out there. It's your auto insurance if it's your personal car that you're driving, but the employer also gets pulled into that. And what do you think an attorney's going to do if the employer has, you hit a car with 6 attorneys in it going to a conference? Believe me, you're going to get sued if it's your fault, probably even if it isn't. What do you think if the attorneys find out that your employer knew that you had 3 moving violations and 2 accidents in the last 3 years and didn't do anything about it? That's going to be, they're going to go after them big time. So, I always tell people, know what you're willing to tolerate as an organization. That varies between different ones. In drug testing, I'm not here to be popular. Many organizations do that as well. They'll do it after every workers' comp claim. They may do just an overall random drug test, but you can't be impaired and be out there on the road. I mean, you're putting yourself and everyone else at risk. This one, now again, it's a no zombie zone. What are you seeing? It's kind of a trick question, but what do you see when you look at that picture? And she's not holding a beer bottle. I looked at that real closely. It's not that kind of a trick question. I think she might be the boss. That's her. Yeah.
Different color dress.
Oh, I didn't even pick up on that. You're all seeing what I would think you would see because you're not criminals. But if you're a bad guy, you know what I see here? First of all, visiting nurses don't wear those uniforms anymore. We had to search long and hard to find that uniform. But if I'm a bad guy, I'm seeing a target.
Yeah, the one on the right.
And this is one of the things, well, any of them, they're nurses. If I see those bags and I'm a bad guy, I know you're a nurse and you probably have syringes in there and you may have some drugs. You're a target. And we really need to get past, we have to think about how do other people see what we see if they have a nefarious motive. So, very quickly, are you street smart? We all think we're street smart, but we're really not. We're not that vigilant about our surroundings. We had a claim in Harrisburg where a visiting nurse wanted to be early for an appointment. So she had never been to this location before. Similar to me today, I came in like a half an hour early because I didn't know if I'm going to get stuck on 80 or whatever. That was her mindset. But she got there really early. It was too early for her to go up and knock on the door. So she did what I used to do. In fact, my daughter was in pharmaceutical sales. She stopped doing it after this happened. She got her laptop out, get a little work done in her car before going in. She's in a strange neighborhood. The drug dealers thought she was there to make a buy. So they came up and interacted with her. She explained, no, I'm a visiting nurse. I'm here to help this lady in this house. And they actually apologized and left her alone. Now, I don't know if drug dealers are that polite everywhere, but in that block in Harrisburg, they're real gentlemen. Liaison officer, if you have them come in to do a very specific presentation on personal safety, they're going to tell you she made a couple of mistakes. Number one, identifying herself as a visiting nurse could make her a target, like I just said before. And the laptop, because where's her focus of attention? Right here. She has no idea what's going on around her. So these are things that you have to be thinking about. And I kind of get a kick out of this too, because I go into Philadelphia and Pittsburgh a lot, and then I get to the middle of the state, and someone says, Philadelphia, oh, it's scary, it's scary, it's scary. You know, it's crime all over the place. It's running rampant. Well, where are you? I'm in Montrose. Well, you don't have to lock your doors in Montrose. If you have that mindset, you haven't been to some of the hospitals that I visit in rural areas. And guess what? We had this conversation. This is a good thing. So I'll say, you know, where it was. There's a small hospital in Montrose. And when I was doing their safety committee presentation, this topic came up. Now, if you're in a hospital in Philadelphia, you probably have an armed police officer right there. And if they need to call 911, they've got response time like that because there's so many police officers. You know what the response time? They gave me an example. You have somebody strung out on meth, 3 o'clock in the morning, trying to get in the emergency room door. 45 minutes response time because the state police are scattered. If they're on another call, there's only a couple of them. You're maybe not as safe as you think you are because you're in a rural area. So this applies to all of us. We've had, with people doing the kind of job that your folks are doing, muggings while they're going in to see a family, sexual assaults. With that one, again, with safety committees, the question came up, should we be talking about this at safety committee? Well, you don't use the person's name, although everybody knew who she was. But you don't stick your head in the sand and say, act like it didn't happen. We need to find out what we can do as an organization to keep her more, not only her, anyone more safe when they're going into the different locations. Stabbings, again, I don't want to go on longer than I should because I don't really have this time that well. But we had a stabbing this year that was pretty much in the same vein as the visiting nurse kind of example. You know what, I always draw a blank when I think about this program. Life skills program. You know what that is? They just teach consumers how to do what we would take for granted every day. And one of the things they were doing in this program is teaching people how to go through a grocery store line and make change. So they had some rented space in a shared occupancy building with plate glass windows. And when they would go through the exercise, they would bring a small catcher, just drop off the floor, put it on the table, and they had 20 bucks in there, and they would just teach people how to make change and go through the grocery store line. When they were done, it would go under there. They didn't think of that as being any kind of a hazard. There's 20 bucks in there. Who cares? The bad guys see it from outside, and they see an easy target. And I'll give this landlord credit. They did a lot more than a lot of landlords as far as videotaping and that stuff, but the bad guys have been bad guys for a while, and they knew where the cameras were, and they were able to come in, and they waited until the last employee was locking up for the day. They grabbed him, threw it in the men's room where there weren't any cameras. They beat him up to get his attention, wanted to know where the cash register was. He was happy to tell them. And when he said, but there's any money in there. Well, when they didn't find any money, that's when they came back and stabbed him. So again, it's perception. And what did they do? Among a lot of other things, they now have a buddy system for all their locations. You cannot open or close any of their facilities by yourself. You don't want to wait for an employee to be stabbed before you start thinking about simple things that don't really cost money to implement to maybe save somebody the trauma that he went through. The other one is gangs. I happened to be finishing a safety committee presentation one day, and one of the guys came up and was talking to a supervisor near me, and this is in Pittsburgh, and he said he went in for it was a counseling session. I'm not sure if it was foster care, but he walked into the door of the living room, saw the gang in there. I mean, they all had their collars on and the whole bit. And he turned around and walked away. He didn't run, he didn't panic, but he got out of Dodge. I'm afraid with new employees that they don't feel empowered to do that. You have to make sure employees know if they walk up to that door, and that's an extreme example, but all of a sudden there's a Rottweiler in there, and I'm 2 weeks on the job, do I feel that I have to go in? No, make sure they understand and come back, call the supervisor, and look for some guidance there. So remedies, already talked about, police community liaison officer. If you have an opportunity to bring somebody like that in, they can give you a lot of information about personal safety. You can do different kinds of trainings. DVDs are kind of a thing of the past. They're being replaced by webcasts, because they can sell me one DVD knowing that I can distribute it to 1,000 people legally, and with a webcast you can't do that. Now the positive is, I'm understanding, the negative is you have to pay for it. The positive is you can get things very specific to what you do. So if you use Hoyer lifts when you're lifting individuals, you can get a webcast on how to use Hoyer lifts specifically. Always be aware of your surroundings, the buddy system I talked about, and this one I talked about as well already. And the time of day you visit can be very important too. The scariest place I go throughout the entire state, and it might surprise you because I get very close to some bad neighborhoods in North Philly, but there's a place called Braddock, Pennsylvania. I don't know if you know where that is. It's on the outskirts of Philly. It's kind of like a ghost town because it was a factory, big factory, and now everything's gone. I get the willies every time I go there, and I will only go there about 10 o'clock in the morning. And when I get there, typically they have a guard inside, and they will, let me in. You have to be buzzed in, and they will usually escort me back out to my car. My reason for going there at that particular time is I've seen it in other parts of the day. There's the fewest people on the street at that particular time. That's just what I kind of learned. I'm assuming that the drug dealers are probably done with their night shift, taking a break before, starting the new one. But, look into those kind of things. Last one is needle sticks, and this is a trick question. Are you exposed to needles on the job? Absolutely. This is one I learned at an OSHA training a long time ago, because he asked that question, and a lot of people say, no, I don't do that. Well, there's legal use of needles and there's illegal use of needles, both of which are disposed of improperly. And there's where I normally see them. Never ever sit on a bed. If you're going into a home, there's a lot of reasons you don't sit on the bed, but somebody's just trying to be a good guy. And a lot of our claims come from being a good guy. Oh, the Super Bowl's next weekend. You're there as a counselor. Could you move this TV for me over here? Yeah, sounds like hardball, but no, I'm not allowed to. I'd love to help you. Maybe we can make arrangements for somebody to come in and do that, but I can't do that because you're doing it to be a nice person, and then you do that, and you end up with your back injury, and then you're costing your organization and yourself money and time and pain. But people leave lancets in their bedding, so we've had people sit on them. If you have any operations that actually change the sheets, you never ever just bunch the sheets together for the same reason. There are sharps that are sometimes left in there. They should have been disposed of properly, but they weren't. They didn't get around to it. Never ever, I wouldn't do this. Once the trash leaves my house, I would never use my hands or my feet to compress the trash can. I live a couple of blocks from a college. I don't know who's running through my backyard and threw something in there because they had to get rid of it in a hurry. And we've had plenty of people compress trash, and it goes right through a sneaker, and we had one guy where it went through the sole of the leather shoe. The other one is, as I said, helping clients. Very often you have somebody go into the home. They're not administering the shot, but the sharps container that the consumer is using, and in some cases it's a milk carton, falls on the floor and some needles fall out. Oh, I'll help you with that. They do, and then they get stuck. So some of the things are reactive, but people have to be aware that don't react so fast to that stuff, and think about other ways you could do it, like maybe suggesting the consumer get a dustpan and a broom. A lot of this stuff is not, brain surgery. It's just trying to think through it ahead of time. Couches, this one disturbed me. We have a foster care worker go in. She sat on the couch and just instinctively put her hand down between the cushion and the side and got a needle stick, because the person who lived in the home with legitimate use of the needle used it. Was the next time she got up, she was going to dispose of it properly, but not right away. So she put it next to her thigh. It made its way into there, and that's where she got it. Also, if you drop a quarter under somebody's couch, let it go. You don't know what you're going to find under there. If you need it real bad, use a yardstick to get it, but it's just not worth diving in underneath the couch or stuff. Backpacks and clothes, that is one that some of our organizations have to work with. Police officers very often will ask ahead of time. Believe it or not, that seems to work a lot, because you already got me. If I lie to you, it could be even worse, and we know you're going to find it. Also, with a lot of our youth programs, they'll have the kids dump the stuff and look at it and be prepared to be very careful when they search through the stuff. We had a guy in Philly. This one didn't turn out so good. We've been pretty fortunate with our needle sticks. This guy ended up with hepatitis afterwards, but he was trying to be a good guy and help the client move, a known drug user moving from one facility to another. And as my Pennsylvania Dutch grandmother would have said, he's very shushily, the way they described him. He did everything real fast. Instead of taking an article of clothes one at a time and putting them in the suitcase, he took the whole bottom drawer like that and got an instant. So I'm not trying, well, I am trying to scare it, because it's out there, and it's not pleasant when it happens. Anybody want to take a guess what these have in common? And the only thing, I'm not trying to throw you, but a wise guy made me change. That's not a wasp or a hornet. That is a male cicada killer in order to make this example work. Anybody want to take a stab at it?
Bites.
Oh, they all bite. Thank you very much. Male cicada killers can't sting, they only bite. The first time I asked that question in front of a group, I thought, what is the no-brainer? Someone said, they're all mammals. It's kind of hard for me to back out of that one. Very quickly, the spider has to do with your inspection checklist, which hopefully you're doing some sort of a checklist. I want to get into that. But we had a spider bite in Lancaster County. Lady sitting at her typewriter, spider crawled up her leg, bit her on the calf, and she ended up with, they said it looked like a bullet wound. The flesh, you know, the way it ate into there from the venom. Up until then, on my own personal checklist, when I went into group homes, I didn't realize it, but my checklist was making me look down. I was looking at electrical connections, GFIs, that kind of stuff. I didn't have anything to force me to look up, and that's what a checklist is supposed to do. After the spider bite, I changed my checklist to make sure now I look up to see if there's any infestation that I can let them know about. Earlier I said something about Rottweilers or Dobermans. Sometimes people say, a Rottweiler is a big baby, never hurt anyone. I'm not picking on Rottweiler. That's my wife's Bichon. We were empty nesters. When I said I'm on the road so much, my kids said Mom needs a replacement, and so that is my replacement. They bite as well. We get as many bites. Maybe they don't do as much damage. But again, think about your policies and dogs. If you have one, is it effective? We had a visiting nurse, the worst dog bite claim that I experienced, or I didn't witness it, but the results of. Their policy was the dog had to be put into a side room, like a bedroom, when the person went in for a visit. That was done. They didn't lock the door. It just had to be put in there. The nurse is manipulating the client out in the living room. Grandson comes in the back door, wants to see where Fido is, opens the door, the dog comes out, sees the owner being touched and attacked and got her in the face. So you have to think through your policy. These little dogs, you go into the house, they're called lap dogs for a reason, they're sitting on the owner's lap. They're their babies, and they almost are offended if you don't make a big deal over this dog. Well, make me the bad guy. Say it's an insurance rule. I love dogs. I would love to play with your dog, but if I got scratched or bitten, I could be in trouble. It's an insurance rule. You know how they are. So it takes the onus off the employee because, and I'll get into the rabies later, you're a stranger, they say the dog never bites, and you're reaching toward the owner as far as the dog's concerned. So they're going to instinctively be protected. The pig was a Vietnamese potbelly pig that some lady actually brought into the office. Remember that one? And she hid it. The pig was sick. She couldn't bear to leave it home alone. And so they put it in the side office where no one's going to know it's there. And someone did go in there and goes, oh, look at the cute pig. She went to pet it. The pig was sick. Didn't want to be touched. Bit her on the hand. So they had to change. That's why employee manuals are this thick now. When I started out, they were this thick. But now it's do not bring your Vietnamese potbelly pig to work, you know. The cat is about rabies. If you have any opportunity to do some education with your employees about rabies, especially in the springtime, it is a big problem. It's very misunderstood. People think it only displays like Cujo, and it doesn't. It can be a lethargic cat walking across the backyard, as happened in the outskirts of Philadelphia. Two poor little girls saw this cute little kitten, and they took it in and were playing with it. It was all lethargic, not really acting like a kitten, and it scratched and bit them playing, and it was rabid, and they had to get the shots. Don't take the excuse, oh, so basically you want to make sure your employees know. I had to go through the shots 2 years ago. It's not pleasant, and it's about a $20,000 bill. But make sure employees know that if you are scratched or bitten, you must let you guys know, but then you need to get the information from the vet. Don't take the homeowner's word. And don't buy this thing about it's an indoor cat. It has never been outside. It hasn't had to get the rabies shots because it's never been outside the house. You can't have rabies. I've had bats in my house. You think the cat is going to tell you the next morning it was bitten by a bat? I don't want to take that chance. As my doctor said, it's a horrible death. Don't stick your finger in a parrot cage. We've had those claims. The turkey's from Indiana County. Caregiver goes onto the property, rural Indiana County, and this domestic turkey, apparently they're as aggressive as geese, and it pecked her in the derriere. She then went and sat on a urine-soaked couch, so we had an exposure claim as well. The snake I'm going to skip. I'm way behind. I don't know how much time you want me to take here, but
Scott, take whatever time you need, because,
okay.
yeah,
The
we're not out of time.
the wasp hornet is about outside conditions. So if you have a picnic table for your employees, are you checking that in the springtime? Think about your checklist being seasonal. The mouse, we had a rat bite this year, where, again, it was a youth program. They took the kids to an animal shelter. None of the kids got hurt, but the staff stuck his finger in a cage where there was a rat, and the rat bit him. We get some odd claims.
Scott, did you have any experience with bed bugs? Yeah?
Yeah, that's coming. Actually, that's what I just skipped, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you. That one is a hard one as far as preventing, but educational material, I highly recommend you try to get as much information out to people. Because that's a flea. We've had flea infestations. Let people know how fast they can multiply, how badly you can get bitten up, and how fast that happens. The other one is scabies. You know, be proactive in getting information out about scabies, so it helps reduce the panic when that finally does happen. And finally, bed bugs. I mean, they are, I don't know of any residential organization I work with anywhere in the state that hasn't had some experience with bed bugs. They're everywhere. I could really skeeve you out. The traveling I do, believe me, the first thing I do now when I go in is I make sure my suitcase is somewhere on a hard surface, and I'm lifting up. I don't know if it's great for, back injury prevention, but I'm looking under the mattress and doing a bed bug check and checking the drawers. So, yeah, unfortunately, you can bring them home from almost anywhere. You want to try to be as vigilant as you can. Analyzing the injury cause is kind of what Marge was talking about before. I think the form she handed out, was that an internal incident report? It's not the one that goes into the into your insurance carrier? Is that right? It sounded like the kind of questions.
That's internal, I think.
It's internal?
I think
It
so.
sounded like the kind of questions that would be your internal investigation. That's kind of what this is. And a lot of people say, why do we even have to do this? Why don't the adjusters do it? Well, because the adjusters do an investigation, but their whole focus is on this: is this a legitimate claim or isn't it? And I had one where they called me. I was on vacation, and this lady in Pittsburgh was all excited. She had an employee who was punching out for lunch. They're right in downtown. She was going to meet her daughter 4 blocks away. On the way, she got hit by a car. And when she got out of the hospital and came back to work, she said, "You turned that in as a workers' comp claim, right?" The employer's question to me was, "Are you kidding? I have to turn that in? I don't have to turn that in, right?" I said, "Oh, yeah." She goes, "You've got to be kidding. You mean to tell me that's covered?" I said, "I didn't say it was covered." I said, "She's presenting it to you as a workers' comp claim. Let the adjuster do their job. I'm 98% sure it'll be denied." Now, it was, but I didn't do the investigation. It's not my job or your job or the safety committee's job to make that decision. It's the adjuster's job. You want to just focus on preventing claims. If that same scenario, that employee is walking out to go meet her daughter, and on the way out, another supervisor says, "Oh, you're going 4 blocks in that direction? The post office is 2 blocks on your way. Here, drop off the company mail." That changes the whole picture. Now she's in course and scope, and it probably would have been covered. But that's why we don't get involved in that. We do the investigation. The other reason that you should be doing this is because you know your business better than anyone else. That's, again, why on safety committees, they want all the various types of positions represented. Because if it's a client on staff injury, you want your crisis prevention trainer on your committee. If it's lifting, somebody familiar with lifting. It'll help you identify where retraining is necessary. And you want to make sure that your coworkers understand this is an opportunity, not a punishment. A lot of things have changed, as I said, since I took my driving test. There's no reason I can't go and relearn some of those skills. It's an opportunity to relearn those skills. And look at the work environment. I'm going to move a little bit faster here. Make sure you're investigating to prevent injury, not to assign blame. And a lot of people don't like they don't like the word investigation in human services for some reason. Debrief does the same thing, as long as you're doing an investigation, but if you call it a debriefing, I'm here to debrief about what happened when you saw Jane fall in the parking lot. It's a little bit more warm and friendly. And we're not trying to get people in trouble, we're trying to find out how it happened so they don't get hurt the same way again. The helping the safety committee, you have a safety committee. Do you guys all know who's on your safety committee? And do you know how to contact them if there's a safety concern? You should have a policy that tells all your employees if they have a safety concern, how do they let the safety committee know, and how does the safety committee then get back to them and validate their concern? So look at all accidents and incidents that occurred. Look at incidents as opportunities. So even though I fell on that coffee spill in the kitchen, if I don't tell anybody about it, that's wrong. I'm being selfish. I need to let someone know that there was a coffee spill. I can give you tons of examples of organizations that have made some major changes from incidents before that person falls and hurts, has a brain injury. You guys were just told this, you're going to be helping in the investigations, or you are a big part of it. Absolutely. Supervisors should always be involved for the reasons it states there, but also you want to try to get some outside influence. I always recommend a safety committee member be part of this as well, because that person might be my best friend as a supervisor that can negatively influence the investigation. Or I'm professional, but I really don't care for this person, and that can negatively affect it as well. You don't have lights and sirens in your car, but if you can get out there right away, you may find something today that's not there yesterday, and that can especially apply to black ice. What is causing it? A split spout from freezing and thawing, and it's drooling down there today. We will notice it. Tomorrow it's all dried up. The black ice is gone. We don't need reason to look up there, and so that's why it can be important to be out there right away. Make sure you interview witnesses, fellow employees. Interview people separately and privately. We don't do this for the same reason the police do, but if you have two people sitting in the room that witness the same event, one's going to be more aggressive than the other, just by nature, and they're going to start to say what happened. The other one may think, oh, it's not the way I actually remember that happening. I thought it was the left foot that went out from under him. So they're not going to offer up what they thought is different because they know this person is usually right about things. That's why you separate people. Get their version, put them together, you get a pretty good idea of what really happened. And let the witnesses know that we're not trying to get anybody in trouble here. And ask them, since they saw it, do you have any suggestions on how to prevent this in the future, since you were right there when it happened? Making a record of the accident scene, that's usually physical things, lighting, footwear, hand rail. Try to ask open-ended questions, what, when, how, where, and who. To use the injured person's name or not, I say that you don't at safety committee, but that's for safety committee use. And using a camera can be very helpful. If you're at a location a lot of people don't get into, you can snap a photograph. Now what you're going to probably think is, how could you go to a private home and do that? Maybe not, but one organization, the investigator on their safety committee is a former police detective. He goes and knocks on the door of the private home. They usually have a pretty good rapport, a relationship with the caregiver. And they'll say, Marge got hurt here yesterday, and I'm so-and-so, and I'm with the agency. And do you mind if I just ask you a few questions? He said he almost always gets inside the house. What's he looking for? In his case, for what they do, he'll go into the bedroom where the injury occurred, and he's looking to see how close is the dresser to the bed. Is there a mechanical lift? What's the care plan say? Does the care plan say that this person's 120 pounds and now they're 120 or 220 pounds, but nobody ever changed the care plan? It sounds bizarre, but sometimes that is the exact reason people get hurt. Somebody didn't take their meds today, that person didn't have time to put it in the chart, and then the next person comes on, and they're the ones that experience the behavior that they're not used to. So you kind of get the drift there as well. The most important part of your investigation is helping the safety committee get to the root cause of the accident. The guy standing on the dominoes doesn't even know what, that he's going to go down. But he's going to. And in order to do a really effective investigation, you need to get back to that first domino. I think the 5 whys is brilliant in its simplicity. It comes from Six Sigma, And the only way I can explain this is put yourself in a car with a 4-year-old, niece, nephew, your own children, grandchildren, whatever. That's about the age they start asking those tough questions, like, why is the sky blue? And you go, oh, just because. And you wish you paid attention in 11th grade. But you say, just because. And they go, but because why? And they'll continue that until they get an answer that makes sense to them. If you use why and what when you're doing your investigation, it really helps you get back to that first domino. We know you fell. Why did you fall? What did you fall on? Why was it there? And you just keep going backwards. I always ask if the accident was preventable, because if it was, there should be something we can do to prevent it in the future. Make sure you're following up the recommendations that were made and monitor those changes. Just because we think we have this brilliant idea for a new policy, this is a risk management mistake all the time. You go, well, here's what you should do. And then it's implemented. Well, you don't just walk away. You have to make sure it actually worked. It doesn't always, so you might have to go back and start over or modify, tweak it. Holding employees and supervisors accountable for unsafe acts is critical. Of all the organizations I work with, the two things they have in common, the ones that are really, really successful, is excellent communication between staff and management in both directions, and secondly, accountability for unsafe acts. And do not confuse that with coverage. Another one up here in northeastern Pennsylvania years ago, group homes, they almost always have a gas grill in the back, right? It's not my gas grill, so I don't cover it. And it's exposed to the weather. The first thing that goes is the automatic ignition. We get a lot of these claims. Somebody goes out, they turn on the gas, they hit the ignition, it doesn't work. They leave the gas on, they go searching for matches, which are harder and harder to find. Now they come out with their match, the gas is built up, they strike a match, and there's a blowback and they burn their hand. This organization said, you can no longer light a gas grill with a match. If it's not working, go and cook inside, call maintenance, they'll be there as soon as they can. They also changed their checklist, so they're looking at these things on a monthly basis. But let's say that I work there, and a month after this edict comes out that I can no longer light a gas grill with a match, I do it. I'm assuming a supervisor's not standing right there saying, do not do that, because that's a little bit different too. Then it might be they can deny it. But I just forgot the new policy. Well, am I covered? Yeah, I'm going to be covered. My injury is going to be paid for under workers' comp. But that's not the end of the story with really good organizations. They're going to say, Scott, our progressive discipline policy starts now. You were told, in some places they sign off on all these policies, and they reinforce that and do it again with their own supervisor. You were told you can't do that. You did it, and so this is a verbal warning. But whatever your policy, whatever your progression is, if it's the third time I let a gas grill with a match, maybe this just isn't the job for me. You've got to decide that again as a company. And try to use lessons, the real things that occur here, try to use those as a training tool. Very quickly, there was an organization where a girl was given her third warning for not doing things properly, interacting with students. And she, the third time, was working with teenage girls, spun on her heel after exciting the girl instead of de-escalating. They did this cardinal sin of turning her back to her. And the girl grabbed her ponytail, yanked, bad neck injury. It was covered under workers' comp, but this is her third time, and she's no longer with the agency. They said, this isn't going to work out. You're putting yourself at risk of injury, and it's not working with the kids either. So you have to make those decisions when it's just not working out. So basically, in summary, what I tried to throw in here, some of the things you could do to help fix what these hazards are. But this is kind of a summary of that. Look at your exposures outside of traditionally controlled environments. That home that you walk into, as I said, you can't control that, but what do you do about that? Your non-owned workplaces. This also happened in northeastern Pennsylvania. What Marge talked about, where I come in with these members and I'm always asking, how did the injury occur? I can look at the claim form and see that, but I need to know that they know how it occurred, that they gave it attention and did an investigation. Second question is, what's the corrective action? That doesn't mean punitive. It means, what are we doing to try to make sure they don't get hurt that way again? Well, in this case, she didn't know my routine, and I see a big reserve on this claim, and she said he fell through the pig ramp We went for a foster care visit, and he fell through the pig ramp. And she moved right on to something else. And I went, whoa, 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 slow down. Now, I'm expecting that the foster child is in 4-H and that they've got prize hogs in the back or something along these lines, right? No. And she looked at me like I was crazy. No, they don't have. They have pet Vietnamese potbelly pigs in the house. And the pigs have big bellies and short legs, so they can't go from floor to floor. So the homeowner took thin-grade plywood, and he covers half the steps with thin-grade plywood for the pigs to go up from floor to floor, and then the humans are supposed to use the steps. Our guy decides to use the ramp, falls through the ramp, injures his back to the tune of over $10,000. If you're going in to do the care plan, if you're making that first visit to the house, that's what I'm really trying to get at. Somebody's going in, and I don't know if you're doing these inspections now. If you're not, I highly suggest it. Visiting nurses are great at doing this. They go in and they will show you their checklist. And they're developing their care plan. How much room do we have to use? What equipment we need? What are the floorboards broken? I mean, they've got a whole list, and they don't mind showing some other programs, counseling and whatnot. You may not feel very comfortable doing it. Doesn't mean you don't do it. You don't have a formal list. But you're keeping your eyes open for what hazards are here that I can let my employee know about before they go in. And that very well may be, by the way, they got a pig ramp in their living room. You know, that jumps out at you. The other one is Uncle Louie put the wheelchair ramp up. And we were trying to save a couple bucks. He didn't use the right pitch, he didn't use the right material, and most often didn't put the side lifts on the wheelchair ramp. Now our caregiver is helping the guy down in the wheelchair. The wheel falls off because she's not paying close enough attention. Her back injury comes trying to prevent him from falling. Those are all things that you want to look out at ahead of time. Formal inspections, as I said, the visiting nurses do that. If you feel comfortable doing it as an organization, put something together. It helps that person, like me with my spider. Oh yeah, I didn't think about looking there, but now the checklist tells me to. And the informal inspections, they should be done on a regular basis, not just when you're doing the care plan, but you pick the time period. But what changed in that environment? And what can we look for proactively instead of, after the injury occurs? So you've got real dangers to deal with. Your employees have real dangers to deal with. You also have to be aware of OSHA's standard. Now I was going to read this in the very beginning so you can keep it in the back of your mind, because everybody knows about Part A, but a lot of people don't know about Part B. OSHA, I remember when they were putting out they were talking about an ergonomics standard, and it was like panic. It'll put us out of business. Well, they never did it, but they don't need it. All they have to do is use this general duty clause. It's the employer's responsibility shall furnish to each of his employees employment in a place of employment which are free from recognized hazards that are causing or likely to cause serious physical harm to his employees, okay? Everybody seems to, even though they don't know the words, the general public knows the employer's job is to keep me safe, but they don't know about Part 2. So if we put that footwear policy in, employee, you've got a responsibility too. And that's something that you may want to help use to reinforce. This is why we do it. We're not being the safety police. We're doing it because other people have been hurt. And again, use those examples of other people who were hurt here, even if you don't use their name. Sometimes they'll give you permission to. I've had that happen more than once, especially with some bizarre, we had a SWAT attack, believe it or not. And those people said, yeah, you can use my name as an example. But, remember that as well. Any questions at all? Did I kind of cover what you were looking for, or?
I would ask the supervisors. There was a lot of good information there.
Yeah, it was.
Sorry I rushed through there. I kind of got a little long in the beginning with my schedule. Well, thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, Scott. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
If everybody's fine with the presentation, or if you leave